This is my Honda Shadow. It's just a entry cruiser 125. Very happy with it. It's very limpy. It's carbureted and V-Twin. Same as, well, to a V-Twin like the Hyosung. But it's not fuel injected, so it's probably a little laggy on that front. I've been riding myself for maybe the last 4 months, so I'm very new to it. When I was looking to buy my first bike, it was tough to find a 125 cruiser that looked like a big bike, and trying to get a used bike in that market is quite tough, and they're all very expensive for used bikes. I was looking at Yamaha, like Dragstars, Marauders, that kind of thing. And luckily where we work, I came across this Honda Shadow, and obviously Honda have a good name for reliability. And it's why I went with them with this ultimately. But there is a gap in the market for 125 cruisers, especially V-Twins, that look like bigger bikes. Look, they got that kind of prestige, having a V-Twin engine.
So we've come to the Bull at Henfield. We've ridden here on the Hyosung Aquila, or Aquila, if you want to call it that. And Dean's brought his Honda Shadow to get some first impressions of the bike and see what we think.
Yeah.
Dean's actually going to ride the Hyosung on the way back. I've ridden it up here. My first impressions for a 125, I think it's pretty good. It's a good bike. It feels nice, it pulls nicely. Even on the dual carriageway, the revs were quite high, but it wasn't screaming. So back in the day when I had a 125, I'd be on the dual carriageway doing 65 and it'd be screaming and almost feeling like the bolts were vibrating out of it. But with the Aquila, it feels a lot more composed. It wasn't screaming. And I got it to 70, I'm pretty sure. I would have got it to 70 if we hadn't been stuck behind that old dude in the Volkswagen Golf. Before that, I got up to about 65 and it still felt like there was more in it. So I'll see if I can get it up to 70, but I think it can do it. And with a big chunky git like me on it.
Yeah. Which is interesting because it's heavier than my bike as well, apparently.
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
The Honda has a little bit more power on paper, so I'll be interested to see how that actually, if you can actually feel the difference.
Yeah.
It does pull well. It doesn't really have much roll-on power, but that's kind of 125s, I think. You know, like if you're in 5th gear and you're rolling on, it's very gradual, but it's smooth. In the corners, it's nice. It's nice and composed. There's some quite nice corners we're going around on the way up here.
Yeah, it's a really good bend.
Yeah, so, and for me, the brakes are great as well. I think the brakes might even be better than my MT-07. The MT-07 is quite known for having kind of squidgy brakes, so it's not got the most bite, but the Hyosung brakes really well and really strongly. Most of the way here, I was just using the back brake, because it's got the combined braking system which links the front and the rear.
It's not a drum brake.
No, there's a disc on the single disc on the front, single disc on the rear, and it brakes really well. I was literally just using the rear brake like around town, and it was nice because I was just kind of lazy braking.
Nice.
And I was slightly concerned with the slow speed stuff that you wouldn't have the same control because you're used to just using the rear brake when you're trying to use slow speed control, but it was fine.
Yeah.
It didn't feel like it was dragging on the front or anything. It felt pretty composed, so I was quite impressed.
Sweet.
I guess you'll find that out, see what you think.
Yeah, I'm going to take over in a little while and see what I think of the bike.
Has the Honda got a drum on the rear?
Yeah, it's a drum brake.
Okay.
Drum brake on the rear.
Just on the front.
Yeah. And it's kind of hard to feel the rear brake working sometimes. Because when you're taking a turn anyways, you're usually going pretty quick. If you're going to press the brake, so.
Well, let's be honest, you're on a cruiser, so you're not going quickly. Which is fine.
I thought I felt pretty nippy. I kind of disappeared at times.
Yeah, I got stuck at a roundabout at one point.
Yeah, that was it.
So this is the thing as well. So Dean's on L plates because he's only got CVT. He is literally the target audience for this bike. He likes cruisers, and he's slightly cool.
You could say that. But yeah, no, it's definitely. When I was looking for a bike, I was trying to find a V-twin looking cruiser bike, but they're all used Japanese bikes at the moment, and there's not really anything new on the market apart from this Aquila and there's another bike, AJS or something.
But the AJS is a parallel twin, not a V-twin.
Yeah.
So it's not legit V-twin.
So this is literally the only other.
This is the only 125 V-twin I could find when I did some research. So no one else. People are making 125 cruisers, but they're single cylinder, or they're the parallel twin, which is the AJS. So there isn't another V-twin 125 that I found. If anyone else has found one, I'd be interested here, but I couldn't find one. Styling, what do you think?
I mean, I prefer the styling of my Honda because it's just more classic. But the Hyosung looks pretty cool. I would probably, we mentioned before, taking off some of those decals on the side, or the numbers.
The stickers are a bit cheesy for me.
Yeah.
The Grand Voyage sticker's a bit cheesy. Yeah, if it was my bike, I'd take that straight off.
Yeah.
But it's just a sticker, so that's easy enough to do.
Yeah. So.
And if you watch our video on removing residue from L plates, you'll know how to remove sticker residue.
Yeah.
Effectively.
Just use brake cleaner.
Yeah, but be careful. I mean, for me, I'm not into cruisers or like custom style motorbikes, but I probably personally prefer the look of the Hyosung because it's a bit more. It seems a bit more modern and a bit like a bobber. Just feels a bit more like a modern cruiser. Like yours is a bit more classically styled.
Yeah.
So I kind of like the slightly more edgy design of it. I think the engine note's nice. We'll try and get some audio of the engine note, just idling and revving it, because it does sound nice, I think. Yeah, I mean, it looks like a decent sized bike. It doesn't look like a scrawny little 125. It helps not to have massive L plates stuck on the side, but...
That's true.
Well, yeah, so braking's really good, handling's nice. It has been dry though today. I'll be interested to take it out in the wet and see how those tyres handle.
Yeah.
Because they are Tim Sun tyres, which probably...
Right, yeah.
I mean, they don't have the...
Yeah, I've got Continental on my Shadow.
How do you find them? Have you ridden in the wet?
Fun. I have ridden in the wet. I've ridden in the wet. And they seem fine. I've never slipped or anything, so...
I mean, yeah, I think it's going to be far more interesting you riding it than me. Because I'm used to a bigger bike, so it feels a lot different. But for a 125, it probably is the nicest 125 I've ridden. But then, I've only ridden a couple of 125s. I've ridden a 125 Duke, and I had my old Sinus RS 125. They're the only things I can compare it against.
Yeah.
And the Duke was nice, but again, there's a bit... I mean, I found with the Hyosung it's a bit cramped for me.
Yeah.
Like the seating position was a little bit cramped because my feet were kind of a bit in front of me, but it was mid, and then I was kind of leaning forward.
Hunching, yeah.
So I think with you, it'll probably feel a lot different. Probably feel better, I hope.
Yeah. I've ridden the YZF, the YBO.
When do you ride a YZF?
CBO.
Is that when you stole one back in Ireland?
No, I've ridden the one we have at work.
Was that the new one?
The new one.
Okay.
Yeah, 2019 one. But I'm not a big fan of that riding position, so I'm definitely all about laid back cruising.
I'd be interested to see what you think of the kind of more mid position of the Hyosung.
Mm.
I think it might suit you a bit better. And obviously the controls, like, if it was my bike, I'd position everything a little bit better. I think the front brake lever is a bit high. I'd probably angle that down a bit, and I'll probably mess around with it. But
yeah. I've ridden the hoodlum as well, quite a bit actually. So it'd be interesting to see how it stacks against that. That's not a V-twin, that's just a single.
And the bars on that are so wide compared. They're quite wide.
My Honda has fairly wide bars as well, but I think they probably come in a little more than the hoodlums does.
The rake.
The
more,
rake.
more of a rake on the
Or
float
sweep.
ball. Eh?
Is it a sweep?
Maybe it's a sweep, maybe it's not. Yeah, bro, what the f*** am I talking about rake? Sweep. He's not wrong. It's sweep. I'm full of shit.
Mm-hmm. The hoodlum I found was quite fun to ride anyways, and it's got that mid position and a big flappy foot pedal,
Foot plates.
foot plates, yeah,
Is that what they're called?
probably. Which are comfortable to rest your feet on. But now I'm used to the forward seating position.
But you've got plates on that as well, haven't you?
No, they're just,
Pegs.
I've just got the pegs. Yeah.
Because Hyosung's just got pegs as well.
Which I'm fine with. Pegs.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's quite a nice bike.
Mm.
For a 125, it rides nicely.
And how much are they?
I think it's 3,649, but that's without on the road fees, so it's probably going to be about 3,800, I reckon, once you got on the road fees
Right.
factored in.
But that was another point. My Honda Shadow will probably retain its value over a longer period of time from now. Then maybe the Aquila.
Yeah. I think the Japanese brands have a bit more pull, brand appeal.
Yeah. Well, it's Honda, so
Yeah. So it's only a Honda.
it's only the most successful motorcycle company.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it depends on your approach. Like, if it was me and I was in the market for a cruiser 125, I would be tempted definitely to go for the Japanese used stuff. But then it's nice to know there's a new option with warranty
Yeah.
straight out of the box that you can get.
I mentioned in my ride up to here that the carbs had to be cleaned.
This is the other thing with the old Japanese stuff. It's carbed, so you have to put the choke on, wait for it to warm up, fart
Yeah.
about. With the Hyosung, it's fuel injected, so you can basically just start it up. I tend to let my bike idle for like 30 seconds and then just ride off, but there's no issues just getting on and riding, I think.
Yeah, that's another thing that slows you down. I don't mind it because it is quite a visceral experience with the bike, but if you're in a rush and it's fucking 6 degrees out, the bike is not going to want to.
Yeah.
So you got to wait a few minutes with the choke out on. Is it choke on?
That's it, yeah.
And then ride off, put it back.
But like Dean says, we all love that visceral experience, don't we? I'll be interested to see what you think when we get back to work.
Yeah. Or checking it out.
We'll get some photos as well of me on the bike and Dean on the bike, just to give you an idea of like size, because I mean we are quite different in height, aren't we?
Yeah, I'm about I don't know, about 5'7" or 5'8" or something like that.
I'm 6'2", I think.
Mm.
But in terms of seat height, it's pretty low, so it's quite approachable for people who are short, I think.
Yeah.
And the bars are quite flat, which I quite like.
Yeah.
I like flat, like straight bars. So the Hyosung's got straight bars, which I prefer.
Yeah.
I don't like all this sweep. Too much sweep and really wide. I don't get it. It's like riding one of those kiddie big wheel tricycle things. So I guess we'll finish our drinks and our nuts,
Yeah.
and we'll get Dean on the Hyosung.
Yeah. Pretty good.
That's the real test. Because I know nothing. I'm not a cruiser guy.
I mean, I've been a cruiser guy for about 3 months.
He's been cruising for a while. Before he got a bike. He was out there in Brighton.
Alright. Yeah. See you on the road.
See you on the road.
See you.
Look at this guy. It is fucking rad.
It's a super mid position. My knees are super high compared to how I normally ride on a cruiser. So, but I'm, as I said, classical kind of cruiser style is more my thing. It feels good. I mean, if anything, it still doesn't feel maybe as fast as mine. It feels a little more sluggish. It's probably the power deficit and the weight. Mirrors are very close, so I can't really see what's behind me, which defeats the purpose of a mirror. I like doing the turns with the mid seating position. You know, you feel quite agile compared to my cruiser, my Honda. It is an enjoyable ride though. It's just different for me as a new rider, getting used to riding any bike. Changing the seating position and where my feet rest will definitely have an effect on my confidence. It's a little more loud, a little more garish than my Shadow as well. For even a stock exhaust, it's quite throaty. It's quite a binary throttle as well. It's hard to get that neutral position. It's kind of on or off. Getting up to 70 down this hill fairly straightforward. It seems to be fine. There is a speed camera up there. Definitely no chance of me getting snapped by that. So far though, a fairly enjoyable ride. My ass is starting to hurt, so it's definitely less comfortable than my Shadow. It's definitely more of an active ride. I've described it, not as laid back as my Shadow. It's a fairly comfortable ride, fairly responsive. It doesn't take much to turn it. Handling is good. It doesn't feel like that weight or power deficit is a big issue.
So we're back in the studio. Today, me and Dino have been test riding the Hyosung Aquila and his Honda Shadow for comparison. I kind of wanted to look at a few bikes that would maybe be competitors for the Hyosung, and it just so happens that Dean owns a Shadow, which is like the original, legit 125 cruiser.
Yeah.
What did you think of the Hyosung, Deanish?
I enjoyed it. It's a good ride. It is more of a, what you said, an aggressive ride. It's
Dean
an aggressive
likes-
riding position.
Dean loves an aggressive ride.
But I do prefer the laid back cruiser position. So as far as cruisers go, that is an aggressive position. So your knees are higher, your feet are in the mid position, and you're leaned more forward, which I found kind of weird in being because I'm a noob still. So.
And I think you're used to the more swept back, wider bars as well, whereas I'm used to flat bars, so this felt more like what I'm used to.
Yeah.
The seating position on that is definitely more laid back, like sitting on a sofa with your feet out in front of you.
Yeah, yeah.
Which was nice. I mean, for me, both of them were equally uncomfortable to sit on. After about 15 minutes, my arse had enough.
Yeah.
But do you find that when you're riding?
I mean, I do get an achy arse on this one because it's not like first class seat or anything, and it is 15-year-old or whatever. But that was a little harder to sit on for a little bit of time, I found. It was just a bit harder on the arse. I don't know.
I find them about the same. After about 15, 20 minutes, I was feeling it.
I mean, you're probably used to whatever. What have you got in your MT? Is it a super cushiony?
No.
Cushiony?
The MT seat is really hard, and I can normally ride that for an hour.
All right.
And then it's uncomfortable. But these were like 15 minutes, and I was like, Christ, I'm feeling this. But
right.
Your bike was definitely roomier for me because I'm 6'2".
Yeah.
I think that fit me better. I felt a bit more crunched up on this.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about the things you liked about each bike?
Yeah, I mean, what I like about my Shadow is the seating position, and it's fairly nippy. Like for a 125, it's on paper what got the max kind of power it can have, really, I suppose. What is the specs of that? It's like 10.7 kilowatts.
I think it's more than that.
Is it?
I think the Shadow's like 14.7 brake horsepower, which is Christ knows what in kilowatts, but it's basically on the limit of horsepower.
Yeah.
I think this is about 14.5 or 14.2, so it's not
Yeah.
far behind. I think you definitely feel like the Honda gets up to speed a bit quicker than the Aquila.
Yeah,
but
it's definitely.
it's not much difference.
Yeah, there's not a massive amount of difference.
But the thing for me about my experience, like from when I had my 125, if I went up any kind of hill with a gradient, I was like losing power so quickly.
Yeah.
I found both of these uphill.
They could,
It was dropping by a couple of miles an hour, but it wasn't that much.
yeah, they're fairly steady as long as you've, gone up the right gear or whatever. I enjoyed the agility of the Aquila. Like it handles much quick. Like it's I don't know what's.
It turns a lot quicker.
Yeah, it just moves easier. Whereas obviously there's a lot more latency in the turn for the Shadow because it's got such big swept handlebars, and the forks are far further forward.
Raked out. Yeah.
Raked out
More rake on the old
on the forks.
float bowl. Yeah, I definitely felt like the Honda handled slower, so it was definitely slower to lean into corners, whereas this was quicker and a bit more aggressive and responsive, which was nice.
Yeah.
I think in terms of power, they're about the same. The Honda might have a bit more oomph, like initially. Yeah. I think they're basically.
But yeah, I think they top out
similar.
essentially the same,
yeah.
Which is interesting because that is a bit heavier and a lower power on paper, but
I think it's fairly similar. Where a big difference I noticed, I don't know if you noticed it, was with braking. So like the Aquila braking,
I
think the brakes are better on this than on my MT-07, literally. Like my MT-07 brakes are pretty squidgy as standard. I've not done anything to modify the brakes, but this has had a lot of bite.
Yeah, I definitely felt like more responsive braking for that. But mine is a drum brake on the rear and the disc on the front, which it does the job, but it's just a bit.
It was quite funny for me going from the Aquila because when I was riding the Aquila, I was on the back brake the whole time. I hardly used the front brake, and then I jumped onto your bike, and there were some points where we were coming up to roundabouts, and I was just using the back brake, and I was like, "That's not going to do it."
Yeah, it's not enough at all.
Yeah.
Just kind of pads you out in the turns a bit. That's about it. I mean, it's more modern display as well. So obviously you've got, and which is the thing about having a new cruiser that is like a new cruiser with a V-twin engine that has things like a rev counter and a fuel gauge, whereas mine was just a speedometer and an odometer, and that's about it. Which is handy to know. I don't mind not knowing what gear I'm in though. So, I mean, I kind of know anyways. I don't need to know which gear specifically I'm in all the time, but like.
I've definitely been spoilt on my MT-07 with having a gear indicator because it's the kind of thing you think that you don't really need, but then it's actually quite nice to have. Because then you can just look at a glance, oh, I'm in fifth. Yeah, whereas on this, I'm like, am I fourth? Am I fifth? Oh, yeah, I'm in fifth.
Yeah, so you're sometimes at risk of shifting when you shouldn't really or whatever.
But you get used to it, don't you?
Yeah, you do.
You get used to what you've got.
Definitely.
I mean, like you say, it's quite nice to have the rev counter. The interesting thing for me with the rev counter on the Aquila is that even when I was getting up to like 9,000, 10,000 RPM, it didn't sound like it was screaming.
Yeah.
Like going along the dual carriageway, it felt really comfortable. It seemed to keep speed really well. Yeah. I didn't get up to 70, but I think it could have got up to 70 and beyond for me.
Yeah.
If we hadn't got stuck behind that old guy.
Yeah, we did get stuck behind some slow guys. I think, we'd probably comfortably get to that speed. Once it got to 60, I was able to like apply a bit more throttle on the straight, and I could see it was climbing enough, and it wasn't like slowing down too dramatically. But yeah, they're both similar, performance-wise. It's just more aggressive riding position. But it's a V-twin, and there's no other 125 V-twins that are brand new on the market really.
That we found.
That we could find. Yeah. So it's a fun ride. It is a fun ride. Yeah, I did enjoy it. Just took me a little to get used to. I'm so used to this laid-back position.
I think as well, maybe it comes down to a styling thing. Like that's a bit more of a classic cruiser look. This is a bit more bobber, modern, potentially. Yeah. So it's a bit more cutting edge than the kind of traditional.
It's a good look. It's a cool bike. Maybe lose the stickers, but... Yeah.
What do you think about the mirrors?
Oh yes, the mirrors I had an issue with, which I did say during the ride. I could not see behind me at all. It was really hard to see. I had to, at one point, ride with my elbows like down like that, so I could just kind of see past my arm.
But don't you just, because on my MT it's like that, I just tuck my elbow in and then look.
Yeah, but even doing that, I could still see half my fucking bicep or whatever it was. So.
But on the Honda, because the bars are so swept back, it's almost like past your shoulder, so you've got a clear view behind you.
Yeah, it's super clear view. Although my mirrors need some tightening. The wind kind of pushes them a bit sometimes, or vibrations. But yeah,
I mean, did you notice these mirrors vibrating? I didn't think they were too bad for vibration.
No, they were fine, I think,
yeah.
But they were still useless.
Definitely saw. I think I had like a third of the mirror was my shoulder, so like the view behind me wasn't amazing, but I'm kind of used to that on my bike.
Yeah, but then I guess it's not hard to put your own mirrors if you want.
I think if this stem was a bit longer to extend it out a bit further, I think the view would be better. So you could probably fudge with that a bit. I don't know if we've got aftermarket. I'm sure we've got aftermarket mirrors that would fit that.
Yeah.
Suspension was good, I thought. Like, the roads weren't too bad. Like, I've been on far worse roads in terms of potholes and stuff. But, like, over bumps, I think both of them were really good.
Yeah.
Both of them were nice and... They didn't feel soft, but it was like they absorbed the uneven road surfaces pretty well. I think it's quite good that we both rode them, because you're like a shorter, lighter guy. I'm like a fat lump that's taller. So I think the fact that you can be taller and it still pulls you along.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think it really was troubled by the fact that I'm a fat lump.
Yeah.
So I must be like 13.5 stone probably. It's one of those things that I would quite like to combine the best aspects of this and the best aspects of that, and then you'd have a great bike. Because if you had the braking of this on that, with the little bit more power from that, it'd be great. And also the kind of handling of this.
Yeah.
So I would say this has got better handling, it's got better braking, slightly less power, but not really noticeably less.
Yeah.
Unless you're jumping from one to another, you probably wouldn't even notice.
Yeah, you probably wouldn't notice that much. I mean, the handling thing is probably based on the styling aspect. It's whatever you're more comfortable with. And you're probably used to having your knees up higher, but for me it was weird.
And this forward thing, I was like, I kept going to put my foot on a peg and there wasn't a peg there, and I was like, shit, I need to put my foot further forward.
It is really, they're super far forward.
But it's super comfortable.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd ever get used to it. I think I'd constantly be going like, where's the peg at? But
yeah.
And I think they both look good. I think they both look like decent bikes. They don't look like spindly little 125s. Like if you didn't have your lane plates on, you'd look pretty badass. Does it sound nicer than yours, do you think?
I like the sound of it, but I also like the subtle sound of this stock system as well. Like, it's not ridiculous like you got these, 1000cc Sportsters, whenever, just like pelting it out the end of their exhausts and stuff, which I find is cool.
Obnoxious.
But like, if you just want to get your bike out in the middle of the night and you just want to ride somewhere and not be loud as hell, I like just getting this out and rolling away quietly.
Stealthy.
Yeah. It's not always about the volume. That it does sound pretty decent. It's not for a stock system, definitely an honoured Chinese bike.
Might even have a Toro system for that at some point.
It
maybe even within the next 10 years. That's an exciting prospect.
Perhaps 10 years. That might be pushing it. But if you're looking for a V-Twin, 125, like cruiser style, the Aquila is...
You've got one option.
It is literally the only one.
Well, in terms of new...
Yeah.
I genuinely think the main competitor for this bike is used Japanese stuff, because you've got your AJS and you've got your Keyway and you've got your UN. But I don't think they look as cool as this. They're not legitimate V-twins.
Yeah.
They haven't got as much power as this. So
yeah, and like the Sinus Hoodlum as well. Like, it's a cool bike to ride, but yeah, it's the same as the Keyway. It's single cylinder, and it doesn't have that V-twin look and kind of feel.
Because you've ridden the Hoodlum.
Yes.
What do you think of the Hoodlum compared to this?
It's a tough one, because I like the seating position of the Hoodlum as well. It's not as far forward as this. It's a little middle-ish with nice big foot plates or whatever. And the handlebars are wider.
A lot wider.
Than the Aquila. So again, it's choosing that slightly more laid-back riding position and style, or the aggressive one.
Would you say this felt like it had more power than the Hoodlum?
I mean, It's hard to tell really. It's been a while since I rode the Hoodlum, but I think fairly similar, I would say. Like,
because what I'm hearing is Hoodlum Aquila comparison test
you should probably compare.
next from MPW
Yeah, 125 cruisers.
with Deanage.
With me. I'm not used to being.
With me, Dean Higgins.
I'm really not used to being in front of the camera.
I mean, I think we had quite a good chat there.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's good.
Coming to stores near you at some time in the next 5 years.
Yeah. Have a look at the description for links to where to get your Aquila.
I had a fun day.
I enjoyed
riding
it.
these
Yeah,
bikes.
it was good fun riding the bikes. It'd be interesting to see what simple things like what the headlight is like at nighttime. You know, because I found that the terrain, the Sinus terrain, when I rode that and the Hoodlum, they were a bit too dim. I don't know. It was hard to see.
Okay.
That's what I found, and it was barely like there was no point in putting the high beams on because I couldn't then see the road like right in front of me. So.
Is that the angle headlights again, I wonder?
Maybe it is, yeah. Because it felt like I was just riding into a black abyss and then I could see some trees. So, it didn't help.
Which makes you feel so confident. Hilariously, now that you mention that, I used my high beams on my bike, I think for the first time last night.
Yeah.
Worked really well.
Yeah.
Yamaha though.
Yeah.
Wonderful Yamaha bike. Wonderful Honda bike.
Yeah.
What about Hyosung?
Could be wonderful.
Why not? Yeah. Maybe a nighttime ride, maybe a wet ride.
Yeah. Well, what's the retail? About 3.8, is that what you said?
I think the bike itself is 3,649, I think, in that ballpark. And then on the road fees are going to be another 100 odd quid for your road tax and L plates and all that jazz thrown in.
Yeah.
So it's about 3,750, 3,800 maybe.
Yeah.
Paying. But I think the speed it's got, the style, the excellent braking, I think it's probably worth that money.
Yeah, and the fact that the USP is the fact that it's a V-Twin and a 125 V-Twin, you know, brand new, which is super hard to find. Yeah, you just can't really find it. And that was the main thing I was looking for when I was trying to buy a bike.
If you're looking for a more aggressive, bobber style, new V-Twin, you've got one option.
Yeah.
And it's sat right here in your face.
Yeah.
What are you going to do about it, Dean? You going to buy one? You going to buy 3?
I mean, if I could own the 2 bikes, I'd have an aggressive style and a laid back one because depending on your mood, you know, I like both.
If you're on L plates, if you've done your CVT, I think you could do a lot worse. And I have done a lot worse than either of these bikes.
Yeah.
So maybe that shows the standards of 125s again. Well, I mean, obviously Japanese.
Well, yeah.
Been fucking
Chinese,
rad,
yeah.
This is pretty rad.
Yeah.
Sweet.
All right.
Well, I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope it's been informative. If you've got any further questions on the Hyosung or the Hondo Shadow or Dean's hair, leave them in the comments or fire us an email.
It's Bedhead. And like and subscribe.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching.
Goodbye.